last time I came here. The idea was that this time I present sort of an idea of what happens when somebody comes into a mental health clinic. What are we looking for? And I want to present this idea to you from a perspective called DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, as a way of sort of framing what we're looking for when people come in our door. And I'm sure there's crossover, similar kinds of things that you guys look for compared to what we look for. We're behavioral health versus your physical health, but even the previous discussion you just had, we're dealing with the same kind of HIPAA compliance, keep track of everything and communicate effectively. So on this sheet, what it basically shows is, in this little house model, there are 4 stages, and on the right-hand side of the page are the problems, and on the left-hand side of the page are the goals that we're looking for. So a person who's in stage 1 is somebody whose life is out of control, and they're at risk of harming themselves or others on a daily or weekly basis. They're doing things that are harmful. It could be just taking an eraser and scratching themselves a lot till they're burning their skin off, or they're practicing suicidal kind of behaviors. It could be binging and purging. It could be a number of kind of things that a stage 1 client is displaying overt behaviors that you could see with your eyes. You could tell that they're doing this particular thing. When we get into stage 2, that's called quiet desperation. You can't see on the outside what the person is doing on the inside. They may be very anxious, but you wouldn't know that. They might be depressed. They might be hearing voices, seeing things. You don't know that unless you ask them, and they tell you that inside they've got this sense of quiet desperation. Something is agitating them and going on. And the goal over on the first stage was behavior control. Let's get this thing stabilized. And the goal of the next one is emotional experiencing. Instead of having sort of an emotional phobia of blocking out emotions and not paying attention, or being way too emotional, it's like, let's get in touch with your emotions, name it, feel where it is in your body, be able to experience this emotion instead of trying to push it away or hold on to it too tightly. When we get up into stage 3, this is called ordinary problems in living. We have our ordinary happiness and unhappiness. All of us in this room have our ups and our downs. It's a regular thing we're dealing with every day. Relationship problems, financial problems, health problems. Is there anybody here that does not experience ordinary happiness and unhappiness? It's just life. But people that have a significant mental illness or a substance use disorder, when they're dealing with ordinary happiness and unhappiness, ordinary problems in life, they tend to slide back down into the lower parts of this house, because it seems to them like things shouldn't be this way. Why do I always have to deal with this? So they'll take a stressor in their life and then they make a bigger deal out of it, and they pull into either this quiet desperation again, or they go into acting out behaviors. From a DBT perspective, when we're seeing somebody in stage 1 acting out, from the outside looking in, we look at that and we say, that's a problem. You're drinking too much. Your binging and purging isn't helping. Your cutting yourself isn't helping. Your banging your head against the wall isn't helping. What are you doing? From their perspective, that behavior that we're calling a problem is their best solution to a problem. It's doing something for them. It's helping them in some way, and it's helping them to cope in a way that we don't understand. So we need to try to figure out what's going on inside you so that you can find a more effective way to get the same thing that this particular problem behavior is doing. And so that's where we try to start to figure things out. When we get up into stage 4 is called, there's a sense of incompleteness, and what we want to do over on our goals is cultivate a sense of meaning and purpose. We hardly ever have people coming into our mental health clinics to deal with stage 4 issues. Those are more existential issues, searching for meaning and purpose in life, feeling sort of a blasé, but not depressed, not anxious, not OCD, not schizophrenic, and And some people are at that stage. I've got a client right now working through some issues after a divorce, trying to remake his life, trying to figure out, what is his life now that he's not married, and as he defines himself as a married person in an LDS culture, and trying to make sense of all that. And some of that has to do with this up here. He's definitely not down in the basement, but when he first found out about the affair, he was suicidal, so he was down here at one stage thinking this could be a solution to my problems. And now he's learned to deal with his emotions, deal with the ordinary life of juggling kids and work and family and all the things that are going with that. So that's a framework that we look at clients when they come into the door. We try to look at what stage is this person in, and depending on the stage that a person's in, we're going to use different types of skills to approach what we need to do with that person. So just on that page, any questions for me regarding DBT and the framework that we look at? Okay, so when we go to the next page on the back of that house model looks at the same exact things again, and but spells it out. What I just verbally explained explains it in writing. We won't go into all of that, but you can see some of the descriptions of that. When somebody's coming in, we prioritize of all the problems that somebody may be having, what are we going to focus on first? There might be a lot of things cooking. And what we're going to focus on, our number one goal over here on the treatment targets is life-threatening behaviors. We want to decrease life-threatening behaviors. The second target is we want to decrease therapy-interfering behaviors. So if we've got a client that's suicidal and they're not coming into treatment, then that becomes our highest target right there. Like, I have got to get this person to come in on a regular enough basis for me to help them. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters down below if I can't get them to come in. And then number 3 is decreased quality of life interfering behaviors, and you can see in the box there in the middle what some of those kind of things would be. And number 4 is increasing behavioral skills. So in DBT, a little phrase is we want to teach people skills, not pills. And we're not against psychotropic medications for anxiety and depression, etc. But we want a person to learn to practice skillful behaviors. And so we have them go to groups, and we have them practice in individual therapy, skills that they could use to sort of what we call break the chain that causes them problems. So I'll lay out, let's see, there's not a marker. Is there a marker somewhere else?
I'll get you a marker.
Okay. When somebody sits down and we're talking to the person about their problems, we lay out a chain, and you can think of a chain also like dominoes. Like one domino falls into the next, into the next, into the next, and the dominoes are causing this problem to go off. And what we're looking for is which one of these events or these factors in your life is contributing most to your problems going off. And if we can remove that one domino, or we can remove that one link in the chain, or we can teach you how to cope better with that one particular area, we can stop this thing from occurring. So when I'm talking about a chain, the first thing that we look for, and this is on your next page, is we look for the target behavior or the problem behavior. What is it that you're doing? And I look at 3 main buzzwords there. What's the frequency that you do this thing? When you do it, how intense is it? And how long does that thing seem to last before you get back into feeling kind of normal? So we're looking for the target behavior. And then we might look for things that come after that target behavior, the consequences. And there are positive consequences, and there are negative consequences that either punish or reward the likelihood that the person's going to do this behavior again. And so this behavior, again, it could be binging on alcohol, it could be binging and purging, it could be cutting, it could be punching themselves in the face, banging their head on the wall. This is the problem. How frequently does this happen? How intensely does it happen? How long does it last? So if somebody's superficial harming themselves with an eraser, that's not going to be something that I'm going to be really concerned about. It could be a way that their person is practicing letting go of some pressure, letting stuff out. It could also be rehearsing suicidal behavior, like I just wonder what this would be like, and so they burn themselves down or they cause themselves to bleed. And so then it's like, well, so then what happens after that? Well, after I do that behavior, I feel relieved. Okay, what's the likelihood that the person is going to do that behavior again? It's high because the consequence that they're experiencing is a positive consequence. So they're going to go back to this some kind of a self-mutilating kind of behavior. And there's non-suicidal self-mutilation, and then there's suicidal kind of self-mutilation. But that would tell me what's happening here. So then, other parts of this chain that I want to look at is I want to look over here at the trigger. What seemed to set this off that led to you doing this target behavior? And I'm talking quite abstractly here still. What set that off that then led to these other links in the chain that caused this thing to go off? And does this trigger happen all of the time or just some of the time? And so this is links. And the thing that happens before the trigger are called vulnerability factors. So some days a trigger may happen in my life and I don't react at all, and other days the exact same trigger happens and now I'm reacting. So why did you react to the trigger this day at this time, but you didn't react to the same trigger another day at another time? And that has to do with the vulnerability factors. What are the things that have happened in the last 24 hours before this event occurred that caused you to be more vulnerable to this trigger that then set this chain off again and caused you to react the way that you did and went off? So I'm abstract, and I'm always abstract, but any questions about what I'm laying out here right now? So as a therapist, I don't ever have to tell clients these things. Oh, vulnerability factors, triggers, links, consequences, etc. I can train them on that, and we do have groups where people learn about these kind of things. But what I need in the back of my mind as a therapist is I need to start putting this story together, and I need to think, what is it that is causing this to go off the way that it's going off? And it could be here that the person is sick, or they're tired, or they're hungry, or they're stressed over something else that's gone on. And because of that, they're feeling very vulnerable. And now this trigger sets them off, something causes them to be discouraged or depressed or anxious about something. And then it starts to, they have an initial, say, emotion, and then they have a thought, and they have sensations. Etc. Round and round, these things sort of mix up, and then they sort of escalate up to where it feels like I've got to do this thing in order to get relief from all this pressure that's building up. And then bam, they do their target behavior, and then they get consequences that either reinforce the likelihood of this happening again or discouraging it from happening again. And this might make a lot of sense to us, or even just abstractly looking here it on the board. But when you sit down with an individual, it can be quite a mystery even to that individual about why do I keep doing this thing and how does this keep going off the way that it did. And one example that I had one time is I had a client, newly married down in Rexburg, her and her husband were going to school, and she would get really mad and take everything on their kitchen cabinet and sweep it right off onto the floor, including the microwave. Whatever was there, just wipe it all off. And then he would get a hold of her and hold her down to keep her from harming herself until she would calm down. And then sometimes she'd get upset, she'd bang her head on the wall, or she even cracked the steering wheel on her car, sitting there banging her head. And so he would be like across campus, going to a class, get out, call her, text her, no response. what's happening with her, what's she doing? And as he's getting closer and closer to the apartment, his anxiety's going up, he's worried about her, she's not responding, and they'll go to the house and he'll find her doing something, maybe nothing important, but not responding to his text messages or his phone calls because, for whatever reason. And look what this is doing to him. Then he comes in all wrapped up because he's worried that maybe she's harmed herself, she's not calling him. So all these kind of things are going down. So as I would meet with her, you know, head banging, punching holes in the walls, sweeping stuff off of the counter, feeling suicidal, all of these things. And then what would typically happen after these things went down is her husband would come in and find her in this condition, or was there present with her at the time, and he would then go into the act of trying to soothe her, calm her down. And sometimes if she was actively acting out, then he would grab a hold of her and restrain her, you know, and sit down on the couch or hold her on the bed until she calms down. And then when she's calming down, she's talking to him about what's going on with her. That behavior was rewarding the likelihood that she was going to do it again. She was, as we explored this, it turned out that she was afraid that talking to him about her problems, her family of origin problems, issues that were going on with her in her life, stressors in her classes, struggles that she might have, that somehow it was overburdening him and causing him to be stressed about stuff she didn't want him to be stressed about. Because he's going to be the guy who becomes the dentist and makes her helps her have a happy life, and she doesn't want to overwhelm him. So she keeps all this stuff inside, pens it up, builds up until she's acting out, and then he's engaged, holding her and restraining her, and then he's hearing her. So after we analyze this, or as we're analyzing this, and this took like 3 to 5 sessions to get down, that his best attempt to help her is actually reinforcing this whole thing. So then I need to get him involved and her involved and say, okay, and as I start to put a chain together, I'm always looking for a hypothesis. Which one of these links in this chain is the controlling variable? What is it that's happening in this thing that is reinforcing the likelihood of this to go off again? And so we developed a pattern where, on a regular basis, she had the opportunity to vent. And he wanted to hear her anyway. He wasn't telling her, don't talk to me about your problems, you're stressing me out too much. He wanted to be a good new husband and listen, but she didn't know how to talk until it was like out of control. And so as he learned to communicate, and she didn't have to act out in order to get his attention, then all of this stuff went down. Now he's a dentist, now she's a therapist, now I don't know exactly that everything's all happy, but she grew up, she got a life, things are going okay. But each time a therapist using this DBT model meets with somebody, then they're going through that next page of a client's guide to conducting behavior chain analysis, or I've got a therapist guide to conducting behavior chain analysis, and they're looking for these things, and they're breaking things down in as much detail as possible. I had a couple come in, and it took quite a bit of convincing just to get the husband to come in at all. The wife was sure to come in because he was the problem, and she wanted me to fix him, and you know, there's no such thing. It's a combo thing. Any of you that are married know that. And when they would come in, it's like, okay, we're looking over your past week, and I want you to tell me about the worst interaction you guys had in the past week, and then we're going to do a chain on it. And this guy's like, oh, another chain, you know. And we get very specific. What is it that you did? How bad was it? How long did it last? And then we go back here, and we're looking for the things that sort of set it off. And we're looking for the thoughts and emotions and sensations and stuff that sort of start down here kind of low, and then they build up to a point where it feels like this is the only thing I can do to cope with this problem. And then we go back and we can start thinking, okay, if it's vulnerability factors that's causing this thing, what's your sleep patterns looking like? If you're depressed, what kind of medication, do we need medication to deal with your depression? If you've got an illness, what are you doing to manage your illness? Or whether it's a short-term, I'm sick right now, or a chronic, long-term medical condition, how do we deal with the vulnerability factors? How do we manage the triggers? How do we manage these links, etc.? And then we try to come up with new skills to break the chain and reinforce a new way of handling ordinary problems in living. So, and then the last page on the handout is a list of the different types of skills. In dialectical behavior therapy, we have 4 areas of skills. We have mindfulness skills, and mindfulness skills are basically teaching people types of meditation and awareness skills of how to be more aware of what's happening inside myself or outside of myself at any given time. We have emotion regulation skills, where we teach people about an emotion and how to name an emotion, where you feel it in your body, how intense it is, and the idea that emotions have a life of their own. They may come in really big, and then they might get smaller and smaller. And if you learn to experience the emotion and name the emotion, then you can regulate it. And so we have mindfulness, and then emotion regulation. We have what we call distress tolerance skills, and we have interpersonal effectiveness skills. And so the distress tolerance skills are when you're in the heat of a moment right now, what can you do to not make the situation worse? And so you can radically accept the situation as it is, or you can learn to distract yourself from the situation until you can calm down. But whatever you do, don't try to solve the problem right now. How many of you, we talked about texting and emailing. How many of you ever gotten an email and you respond while you're still fired up about the email? And then later you think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But boy, while that energy was churning and you fired off that response, you might live with the regrets of the consequences that come from your expressing yourself in that way while you're fired up. So a distress tolerance skill is basically how to set that aside, distract yourself, calm down, do not make the situation worse by responding while you're under an intense emotion. And so in dialectical behavior therapy, if somebody goes into our skills group, they may be in a skills group for 26 weeks, and ideally they repeat a skills group twice in order to really get a good sense of the skills. And then when they come in to individual therapy, and you sit down with a therapist and you talk about the problems that are going on with these targets that we're looking to reduce, each time you look at that, you go back over the last week or since the last session, and you look at the biggest time that problem went off, and then you say, okay, let's break this thing down. Let's try to figure out what it is that is occurring that's making this happen, and then you try to isolate, right there, that particular thing. It seems to be the thing that sets this all off. And, to give you an example right there, a major problem with people that have domestic violence problems is, the wife is gone, the husband's waiting for her, she's 15 minutes late, and he's worried about her. And he's discouraged that she hasn't called him, she hasn't let him know, and then she comes in the house, and then he's in her face and shoving her. Right here, this emotion of worry is an appropriate emotion. I'm wondering, where is she? What's going on? By the time it gets over here to rage and anger and control, now it's too late. Now he's going off onto his target again. So right here, how can you learn when you're feeling worry to express worry? How do you know how to express discouragement? How do you know how to express this softer initial response that comes from this natural trigger? From a natural trigger, and instead of blocking that emotion and turning it into something else until it escalates till it's something that you regret. So that's an example. So about taking my 30 minutes, any questions about dialectical behavior therapy as I've laid it out, or therapy in general, or what do you do if? I don't know if I'll have the answers, but I'll make it up and see if I can BS you into believing it. So Any thoughts? Good. All right. Well, that's my time, and we can talk again another time if you want to schedule any of these up, any more things. I will erase and
Thanks, Caleb. We appreciate you coming out. This is
Thank you.
the last time you'll see this man, so
yeah.
questions. All right. So just, we don't want to keep you guys too long. Thanks again, Caleb.
Yep.
We don't want to keep you too long, so we just have some brief things to go over, nothing too long. So I'll ask a question, I know the response. Anything on the rumor mill? Anything? No. No? Stacy? Annie did break her foot. She did. It's not a rumor. Correct, man.
The rumor is there's gonna be like a 3-story underground parking garage coming in
It's happening. Next to the Smiths.
next to the Smiths. Perfect, okay, that's what I figured.
2020. Nothing. You guys are a tough crowd there. Felt bad for Joel.
I know I said something,
Do you wanna
it
do
was an awkward
Do
silence.
you guys want to do stretches? No? Stacy, you want to show us what you were doing earlier? You're good? All right. All right, so new charging method. We're familiar with it, right? Does everyone know how to charge items?
Yes.
Yes. Are we running into problems with charging items? Mandy?
Do PAs know how to charge items?
No.
Because that's where the office bill went.
So we got the email from Bentley, like March 2nd, said, so our lost charges have been down the last couple months. Ever since we started doing this, they've gone down, and they've kind of hung around the same area. But then they said, so on March 2nd, they're like, but March's lost charges are already up to $200. And I'm like, so 2 days in, and that's what it was. So we're trying now, we've been trying with Nolan just to package 3 Aquacells, so if surgery comes back, they get 3 Aquacells. They just sit with them, they charge that, and they stay there. They don't have to come take any. So we're working on that. Do you feel like that's enough for a hip or for a knee? 3 of those should take care of their hospital stay?
Because my patient got discharged, came back through the ER, and that's when I come out and get one.
I don't know. Are there some in the ER?
No, they do not talk to them in the ER.
No, they
No.
usually don't need to.
There are none in the ER. Rayleigh?
You, along with like a package for surgery, you put a bolster in with that
We can look at it, and I think it's smart. It's just there's so much pushback on bundling charges for some odd reason. So we can do it.
too. I just think that's a good idea if you can do it.
I don't think that's unreasonable. Okay, if it's not set up, like if you come in the morning and it's not set up and you don't know how to set it up, you can either grab Tori or myself and we can show you how to do it. It should be set up
And
every
it's
morning.
once a day in the morning.
Yeah, so we're asking ward clerks to set up the day shift and the night shift. But if you don't toggle with the computer, it does go black. But if you just hit the
Okay.
badge, log it in, and get to it, they're set up there. Every time the screen's black, it takes like a minute to get to where you're at, but it's there. They've done a pretty good
When I
job.
worked, there was only a day shift thing, and I had to re-log in and everything, and there
Okay.
wasn't a night shift, and no one seemed to know
Yeah, if you
if you were
run into
supposed
that,
to do a night or a day that I worked with.
let me know. Normally,
So,
I wish
I
Stacy
just-
just left. But for ward clerks, you've been doing a day shift and a night shift.
When I do, that's what I do.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it should be. If
I haven't
not,
seen night shifts either. Like I have to reset it up.
okay.
Okay,
But you know how to
so
reset it up.
Well, I just went through the printout. and-
Perfect. Easy, but it should be done. If you're seeing a repetitive problem, just let us know,
I
and we
think
can. We'll let them know. Okay, so it's that we're behind on yearly evaluations. Yearly evaluations should have been done by March. They won't be done by March because we're in a new system. We've talked about we're doing them in HealthStream, so you will now see pushed out in HealthStream self-evaluations. So get your self-evaluations done, and then we'll do an evaluation with you, and then we'll see if we're thinking the same thing or where we're off and talk about it. But this will be kind of the new norm right now is doing.
Has anyone seen their self-evaluations yet? I haven't seen anything for it.
No, I don't think Tori's pushed them out
Okay.
yet, but she will be soon. Speaking of HealthStream, raise your hand. Hold on, I have my list on my computer. I should have looked at it. Did you get them done? Did you get your Mars done? If not, you're not working, and you're not getting paid. And we made sure they're holding the doctors just as accountable as we are. So.
Is it really gonna happen?
Yeah, they sent out an email today, and Tori fired back and said, well, I have a hard time enforcing it with my people if the doctors aren't doing it. So I'd love to see them cancel ortho surgeries, because it would literally make my day. Okay, so we've made it so your competencies should come out quarterly. You should see quarterly packets in the HealthStream that they are in there at the beginning of the quarter, due by the end of the quarter, and we have 4 of them. The only thing that Tori and I can't take responsibility for is if HR for some reason throws in 5 random ones. We've tried to communicate with them, hey, if you have some, can you talk to us so we can coordinate? But for the most part, HealthStream should come out in just chunks. You should see like 13 at once and not see them for a long time, and then 13 and not see them. We're trying to make it so it's not like every month you have to check your HealthStream because you don't know what's randomly been added into them. I've had a few people tell me the scanners aren't working in the rooms for meds. Does anyone have any experience with this? Is this true? Okay. Okay. If you have repetitive, you can email Tori yourself. I think that the solution is, and IT told us a little while ago, that these scanners are just, in different words, they said they're pretty much meant to die, and they're probably at the end of their life. So we'll be looking at a new scanning system that everyone's gonna be super excited about. I can tell by all of your faces. I'll just keep on going through. Rounding, it's that time of the quarter again that we get to pull you into our office and ask you 4 golden questions. So just think on your mind right now, this is your forewarning. What's going good? If there's anyone that's making your life easier that you want to mention, if there's any process improvement or things that we can do differently to make life better, and any tools or equipment needed. So those are not surprises anymore. Those 4 questions will be coming. So we'll grab you in the next couple weeks while you're working and sit down with you guys. So we really do want you to think about things that can be improved. Tori and I are pretty open to hoping to improve things, and we've got some really good questions to ask this time, so you want to make sure that you're available to be rounded up. It's not like you guys can hide. We know where you are. Okay, and then my other big thing that I'll talk about, since I've been in this position, I've had a few people ask me, hey, I really don't like my schedule. Can we change it? So it's super nice at the beginning. I'm like, yes, we can do this. Let me just take some time to work through it. And every time I did it, it kind of just blew up. One person would agree, and by the time they agreed, the other person didn't agree, and then, so this is going to be my solution. If you want to change your schedule, come talk to me. I'll let you know who you can change with. We'll get you their schedules, and you guys can divvy out days. Then we'll have a meeting with everyone together that's in this agreement. Sign it, say this is it, and that's it. Because other than that, it just makes it impossible. We have people that agree, and then they just back out. So everyone needs to be on the same page. So I know it makes it really hard, but it's just the easiest way to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Other than that, people just say they can do it, and then they don't. All right, I think I covered stuff.
Do you remember? Was it?
Yep.
Okay, back to the scanners. Did you say that they're on next capital budget?
I didn't say what they were.
So, they're on next capital budget, which starts July 1st. So, if we need them before then, let us know. But hopefully we can hold out till then. IT's pretty